So I completely recognize the creative process in that. So to me, there's virtually no difference between that and and sculpting a portrait or writing a piece of music or editing a video. It's the same thing. It's
Mm,
exactly the same thing.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so it's I find that the more we get into AI, the more people do with it because AI is a relatively new phenomenon. This is the other thing.
Mhm.
It hasn't been around for the last 25 years. It's only been around.
No.
I mean, it's only been around for a couple of years. It's really unbelievable
But yeah.
how quickly it has. In fact, when DALI, I think it was DALI 2 or something, the first of, I don't know, publicly available version or something first came out. I remember we covered this on this podcast. This is how recent this was, you know.
Mhm.
And between then and then, I don't know, when Photoshop brought out generative fill, I made a video about that. I turned a lumberjack image into a pirate shot, and it was terrible. you know, because that's where generative fill was at the time. And now we've gotten to the point where, and this is one of the things I've noticed about your work, you know, where you're able to create not only AI generated backgrounds, but these incredible visual pieces of art using AI that I find amazingly stunning. You've got one thing we sort of talked a little bit about just before we went live on the show. You did a series called One Planet, One People, which I found really stunning. Describe a little bit what that was about.
So, you know, as we speak, this is something completely new to me, right? Like, this whole new image generator created by ChatGPT was released, I don't know, like a month ago, like was really fairly new. Um, and I've been playing with different ideas. And as I said, like, it was something that you throwing some kind of concept and then you just kind of go with it, like, you've been surfing or something. That's the way I feel it sometimes. And like I was always fascinated with spaceships, Star Wars, all this stuff. And yeah, and this kind of idea came to my mind, like, why don't I just create images of astronauts, right? So that was the kind of the first step into this. So I was getting some interesting results, and then I've shared that idea with you. And it's the same time when I was creating this, I was just listening to some news, and they were talking about the war and then all this crazy stuff which are happening in our world. And that's just like kind of hit me, like, what? Why don't I just start kind of like showcasing and just kind of using specific countries and kind of try to unite them. That we all kind of living in the same planet, and then kind of doing living kind of in one place, where we all kind of connected, and then we really don't need all this wars and conflicts and all this stuff. And that's how this halving was the next kind of step of this entire idea. So yeah, I was just kind of playing with all these countries which are kind of in some kind of conflicts right now, and started kind of like implementing specific looks for the subject, and just kind of basically showcasing them that with specific flags and then the names and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's how this whole thing born. And then the last image which I've kind of asked AI to create it, because I had this like prompt which was generating this specific look. Yeah, I come up with with this kind of idea that the last image of the series is going to be a person. And also what I can specifically said, like try to mix all the nations and all the races in one kind of person, right? And I know AI was just like kind of like I see what's kind of struggling with this a little bit. And then one of those elements I want to put it in is like instead having a flag, have a planet Earth at the as a kind of logo of that final image. And that's how this whole thing kind of kind of came to existence. And yeah, and it was kind of interesting that as we also spoke a little bit about it, that those ideas are shaping out throughout the process, right? So you're starting with one concept, and then you're just going with some directions, and then you get some influence from, I don't know, the news or the world or you name it. and can kind of, and you can implement it right away. You can kind of put it in, and the AI will help you to kind of go that direction, which I think this is something amazing, that the sky is the limit with this, right? You can really push it any direction you like, any kind of crazy idea you have in your mind, you can kind of put it in life. And that's is one of the things which fascinates me about this process of creating images, that we reach the kind of point in our kind of life, or I don't know, creativity, where any idea can be put in a life, right? There's no boundaries, there's no limits, there's no kind of financial boundaries that if you cannot go to the Arctic, or you cannot go to the moon, or you cannot go to the Mars, whatever. Like literally anything is possible. And that's what has fascinated me about this entire new tools, that we can really explore our imagination to the levels we were not able to do that before. Because again, we spoke about a little bit. Photography is fantastic, and I'm gonna love photography because this is how my whole career looked like. And I'm not trying to diminish. I highly respect every photographer, and whatever they do. But I think, again, we reached a level not right now, or the times where we can really start creating images or the ideas we had, which were impossible to do before. And that's what it's fascinating for me, and that's what I'm trying to explore.
Is an interesting thing, really. And I often think it's in the past, some very often the defining factor for some people's work was simply access. The fact that people had access to a certain place, a certain medium, a certain technique or certain tools that allowed them to do something that was different from what a lot of other people did. Um, and that's what outwardly made them become known and respected and so on and so forth. The danger in that is that you end up doing it for you end up doing it for other people, and for the way that other people regard you, in a sense. So it's the one thing I think personally is that with a tool of AI, where as you said, it doesn't really matter whether you're now in the Arctic or not. And I'm using this as a great example because I've literally just
Mm,
been to the
yeah.
Arctic a few
Sure.
weeks ago. Um,
Okay.
and I did a lot of photography there as well. So it comes in. It makes perfect sense for me to talk about that. Now, yeah, you can create an image of the Arctic without even having been there, because you can use AI tools to do that, and that's all well and good. Um, however, you know, for me personally, and I'm sure a lot of people will share that, for me to actually go to that place and put myself into that scenario, into that environment, and create those images, that's important for me because it's part of my process. And I wonder whether, with the emergence of AI, we're going to get to the place where maybe people will start to value that process a little bit more. In the same way that people are shooting film now again for some reason, or listen to vinyls, which for a long time were completely dead. I mean, 15 years ago, a lot of people said, "Film? What the? I mean, come on, man. It's all digital now. Why would you go through all this film bit, developing and like, like now it's like, ooh, okay, I like the process. I just love the way that it's so slow, and I just love the whole process, and that's why I love doing it. Again, case in point here. Uh, it focuses you on the process, and it makes it a valuable thing for yourself rather than for the rest of it. Because actually, you know, I could I could create very, very similar images, just using my digital camera and a bunch of film simulations. Absolutely no problem. I could easily do that digitally and create the same look that I get from HP5 black and white, blah 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 film. Um, But I don't wanna do that because that's not the process. That's not the thing that I like about it. I like the process of getting there, you know? And I wonder whether, with the emergence of technologies like AI, it would give us a chance, at least, possibly to really kind of look inwards and discover the joy in the process for us. You know, um, whether that process is going out with a film camera and shooting film, or whether it is putting yourself into weird situations, and creating photography, or whether in fact it is to create art on the computer and using technological tools like AI to create that art. Um, and so I think the difference, hopefully, well, I'm hoping that the joy will come out of the process rather than just and only the end result.
So you know what? Okay, so first of all, I 100% agree with you when it comes to, photography gives us specific experiences. And as you said, going to Arctic and taking images there, nothing, there's not going to be replaced. You cannot replace that with AI, right? Because it's completely different experience. You're going there, traveling, being there, experiencing the environment, everything. It's a completely different experience. And I'm going to be honest, I 100% agree with you that you cannot replace that with AI and creating those images through AI process. The same thing when it comes to creating portraits. I deeply believe that connecting with people and working with them, being present, finding the best sites, finding the best poses, finding the best lighting, it's a process which cannot be replaced by AI. And just because I do that, when it comes to creating those images, I still shoot portraits. I still work with companies. I still do all this stuff. Um, and as I said, like nothing's going to replace that. The AI, I think it's a new technology which allows us to kind of go beyond. Let's say someone cannot go to the Arctic. Someone cannot, I don't know, have access to the specific people and specific lighting or specific equipment or specific gear. Now they also able to create something which, I don't know, has some meaning for them, or they want to be creative, or they want to do something which, I don't know, they're proud that, okay, I've done this. Also, I think AI can be really good when it comes to testing ideas, right? Let's say I want to create a specific
Yes,
portrait. Let's kind of come up with some mood boards, and then kind of
exactly.
ask AI, "Hey, you know what? Let's kind of come up with this concept. See how I can kind of do it." Because a few days ago, I actually was interesting. I was playing with some portraits when I was just creating them through AI, where there's a, let's say, kids or adults wearing outfits made out of vegetables and fruits and stuff. I don't know. I just have this kind of weird idea, just to kind of for the sake, what I can get. And what was interesting, some of those vegetables and fruits work really, really good. And I could kind of pull it off if I could kind of get access to all this, like, amount of this kind of specific fruit would look really good. And there's some of them which looks horrible, right? So you can really kind of play with the idea prior to photo shoot and see, okay, this is might work, this is might not work, this is how we can improve it, how I can. So I think also AI could be some kind of like a tool for us to test things before we kind of get to actual photo shoot, right?
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, then press here for the full episode in glorious Technicolor. Hey, and don't forget to subscribe.